Hello and welcome to the Adafruit CircuitPython Weekly for October 22nd, 2018. I'm Scott and I'm sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython full-time. This is a weekly meeting that we have where all of the CircuitPython community gets together to talk about all things CircuitPython, whether it's projects that we're working on or specific code or features that we're debating adding to the CircuitPython core. This meeting happens every week on Mondays, unless there's a U.S. holiday typically, and everybody is welcome to join. It happens Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, on our Discord channel. You can join our Discord at any time by going to the URL adafru.it/discord. That will get you into all of our different Adafruit text chats. You'll see a CircuitPython text chat. We're there most of the week, so feel free to drop in if it's not on Monday. This meeting is structured in 4 parts. We'll start with a state of CircuitPython, which is kind of a statistics view of the health of the project, both the core of the project and the libraries of the project. And then we'll go on to hug reports, which we do as a round robin. Round robin idea is that I will start as an example, and then we'll go through everybody in the list of people in the voice chat on Discord right now. And if they're looking, we'll just skip over them. That's totally cool. People just want to listen in. If you're also text only, you can also just post your hug reports and your status updates on text, and I'll read them off in case people are listening just to the audio of this. We'll also do a round robin for status updates. So hug reports is a round robin where you say thanks to people for the work that they've been doing, and then status updates is what have you done in the last week and what do you plan on doing in the coming week. It's really nice for tips and tricks. So like if you're working on something that somebody else has done related work on, you can coordinate and get some ideas from one another, which is good. And then lastly, we'll have an in the weeds section, which is a longer discussion section for anything that came up kind of during those previous sections, or just in general topics that people want to talk about that might be more specific or more detailed, that sort of thing. We do those last so that the kind of bulleted point stuff can happen first and people can listen to that at the start. We do record this meeting, so if you are in the CircuitPython text channel or the voice chat, beware you are being recorded. I record it on my end. It goes up on the Adafruit YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Adafruit. There's a playlist there of both the video recording of the Discord window and of the audio that's happening as well. And I actually just Scanlime hooked me up with diode.zone, which is a PeerTube instance, which is a kind of a distributed YouTube thing. And so I put last week's meeting up there, and I plan on putting this recording up there as well. So it was kind of inspired by the YouTube outage that happened, and I love this idea of more open source distributed sorts of alternatives to these centralized services. So going to be putting the recordings up on DiodZone as well, so check that out. Very neat, and the quality is really good. So it'll go up there. I think I covered everything, so let's go straight into State of CircuitPython. Those of you in the listening in, if I do forget stuff, feel free to let me know. I should say, along with the recordings, we do notes, and those notes have time codes. So if you do want to skip around in this recording, you'll see time codes in there, so you can do that. So I'll take a time code and get into State of CircuitPython. So I'll cover the overall health and then also the core of it, and then hand it off to Kattni for libraries. So first and foremost, overall we had 24 pull requests merged from 13 different authors, which is just an awesome number. That number of authors keeps growing, and in fact here we had 7 reviewers as well, so that is a little bit higher than what we're used to as well, which is great. And I'll let Kattni and I point out individuals who are new to that. And then closed issues, or issues wise, we closed 11 issues. 5 people closed 11 issues, and 14 were opened by 11 people. So we're gaining some issues, but we have a lot of engagement from those 5 and 11 people, so that's really good. Core wise, we had 6 pull requests merged. I pulled these numbers like just an hour ago, so they're pretty fresh. Although GitHub was having issues, so they might be stale from their end. But at the core, we had 6 pull requests merged from 5 different authors. I wanted to shout out a couple, or 3 of the 5. Sag Attack and C47D and Sabas 1080 are all new contributors, or like have only contributed a few times. So thank you to them. And then the other 2 are myself and Dan. So we don't need the props. We do that pretty regularly. And then we have 11 open pull requests, which I think it was 13 when I looked earlier, but it might have changed. So that number changes a little bit. If you do want to see what those 11 open pull requests are, in case you want to start by doing reviews, you can go to the notes and we have a full list. Issues-wise, in the core, we had 6 closed issues by 2 people and 5 opened by 5 people. So we are one less issue than last time, for a total of 65 open issues. And again, there's a link to where you can see all those open issues. Pretty good. It's good to always keep up with the rate of issues, so that's awesome. Downloads-wise, we had Dan released 4.0 Alpha 2 last week, and I don't know exactly what day that was, but we had 110 downloads of that so far. The most interesting thing to me about the download stats for 4.0 Alpha is that it starts to, we're starting to see the different languages that people are downloading. So out of those 110, we had 82 English US downloads, but we also had 15 French downloads, 4 Spanish downloads, 7 German downloads, 1 Tagalog, and 1 Brazilian Portuguese. So that is awesome. And as you may have noticed, we have more languages as well, which is really cool also. And then on the stable side for 3.03, which is our latest stable release, we've had 1,600 downloads total, which is all super typical. So yeah, I guess overall, before I hand it off to Kattni, I would say that we're making good progress on 4.0. You'll see us talk about BLE later, which is kind of the cornerstone of the 4.0 release. So it'll be nice to see some work done on that. And 3.03 has been super solid. So I don't really expect any more work on the 3x branch. Just expect to see 4.0 get more stable and ship on some devices, because we have the display stuff in there. So we actually go kind of crazy sometimes and ship brand new code on devices because we want those extra features. So 4.0 is going really well, and I expect to see it to continue to grow. All right, Kattni, how are the libraries doing?
We are doing well. I wanted to point something out, though. I was
Okay.
looking at the Hacktoberfest statistics today. There are currently over 27,000 open issues tagged with Hacktoberfest, which is amazing. But the great thing about it is that all of the issues that we've tagged with Hacktoberfest have gotten attention, even with that massive number available to search through if people are searching for Hacktoberfest issues. So I just wanted to say that was a really cool thing that I found out earlier today and wanted to share that. And thanks to everyone who has been doing that and who has helped with Hacktoberfest stuff. So we had 18 pull requests merged from 9 different authors. I wanted to call out Crandall J for what I think is their first PR. We had 6 reviewers. We currently have 10 open pull requests. I know a lot of them are getting some pretty serious attention, so we're definitely keeping up with that. I think there's a couple that are a little bit on hold, and I will probably point those out this week and see if anybody wants to take a look at those again and see what we can do. We had 5 issues closed by 4 people and 9 opened by 6 people, so we're definitely increasing issues. However, this is good because it means people are using our stuff and they're finding bugs. So we've got a lot of issues to work through. All of them are listed here. Definitely a good place to take a look. As well, there's the library tracking issue, which is linked later in the notes. So if you want sort of centralized place to go and find out all the information about what's going on with the libraries, you can check out that issue. It's on the CircuitPython repo. It has links. I need to update it later today, so it was updated last week. But it makes it super easy to go to the issues. Everything is actually linked, and it's all in one place. So we have a few issues still going on with some repos, but a lot of the repos that are listed further down are actually repos that are brand new. And that's why they have all these problems, because there's nothing in them yet. So we're actually doing really well. I'm really excited about all the stuff that's been going on with the libraries, and thank you for everybody who's been involved. And that's where we're at.
Great, thank you. All right, and with that, we'll finish Data CircuitPython and move on to Hug Reports right after I take a time code. Hug Reports is a chance for us to say thank you to the folks that have been doing awesome work. Basically, since the last time we had the last chance we had to say thank you. For those of us who come every week, it tends to be on a weekly thing, but feel free to thank people for things that happened further in the past. Like if you found a cool presentation somebody did a year ago, or that's totally worth it. So I will start. And I wanted to say, first and foremost, thank you to Arturo for the, time code. Thank you for sending out the PR, the work in progress PR for the BLE stuff. It looks like a really good start, and I'm excited to have further BLE conversations later in this, in the weeds section. We'll do that. So thank you for really laying the foundation that we can build upon and fine tune to be as Python-y and CircuitPython-y as we can make it. Second, I want to say C47D and Sabas 1080. Thank you for all the Spanish work, or the work on the Spanish translation. I just invited them both to be collaborators because the Spanish translation has had a lot of back and forth from folks, really helping fine tune the translation. So I wanted to give them the opportunity to approve and merge PRs as they see fit. And then lastly, I wanted to just to give a shout out to clar.sh for their support for the Maker Diary NRF 52840 development board. It's just a PR now unless Dan merged it, but we'll get to that soon. And excited to support more and more third-party boards because we want to see CircuitPython and on as many different devices as we can. So thank you to clar.sh as well. Now Bravo Delta is lurking, so we'll go to Brennan.
Thanks to Jerry for working on the DHT library and fiddling around with pull requests. And for all the library wrangling. I feel like this whole thing is sort of starting to really come together as an ecosystem, and that is pretty cool to see.
Awesome. Yeah, you all deserve a lot of credit for building that ecosystem. It's awesome. Yeah, I'll get to Sedacious's stuff. I was going to do it in alphabetical order. So as if Sedacious was in the list. That's why I skipped it. Okay, Carter.
Group hug this week, and then also a big one to Dan for dealing with Windows drivers on the feathers. That's ongoing, and I think he's figured out some great stuff that's solving some things. So thanks for that.
Awesome. No, Sedacious, your notes weren't late. I'd skipped them because I wanted to do it in order. He can't hear me. I don't know why I'm saying that. Okay, Charles.
Well, I guess it's still the same old group hug because I haven't, dealt with anybody specifically, but it's really wonderful to see how this is developing because I find that every time I listen to one of these sessions, I find new things. So it's a group hug to everybody who is ever involved. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Charles. All right, Dan.
Hi. So there are a lot of things that you listed so many things, but I'll just repeat. I'll echo that thanks, Arturo, for the BLE work. That's going to be really helpful. And also thanks to Kattni for just organizing all this library work and plowing through all of it and keeping track of all of it. And it's really wonderful that we have somebody who's doing that and is paying attention to making sure that we handle outstanding issues. I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan. Deshipu.
Okay, so thank you to Jerry and Hexstat for helping, for figuring out how to actually use the mini TFT wing with CircuitPython. That was awesome detectivistic job and a group hack.
Awesome. Thanks to Shipu. Drew.
Yeah, thanks to Lady Ada for reviewing some of the PRs that I put in for Blinka for Beaglebone support.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Okay, F. Morton is lurking, so we'll go. I think Jeff is. Jeff, do you have a mic? Jay Epler. Okay, I'll read it off. Jay Epler says, Hug reports to everyone reporting and working on issues. So, go ahead, Jerry.
I'm trying to find my notes here. Big thanks to Brent for all his work on the LoRaWAN examples that he got out there for Arduino. It's been a big help in my trying to understand how this all works. And Brendan for his help with checking out the DHT updates that went in and testing the memory usage. And also, as Deshivu said, Hexstat for all his work on figuring out the seesaw connections on the mini TFT wing. Nice to be able to access that now.
Mm-hmm.
And then also Cascade for his help in trying to just remember how to do the bitmap font stuff on the SSD 1306.
Mm-hmm.
That's now easy to do.
Good. I'm glad. All right. Thanks, Jerry. Josh says, general group hug this week. It's amazing to see and hear about all of the amazing things people are doing with CircuitPython. It certainly is evolving quickly. Awesome. Thanks, Josh, and I'm glad you got to join in. Kattni.
Yeah, so I have a list today.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to Carter for all the patient support on Discord. There were people who brought stuff up over the weekend, and Carter took a lot of time to work with them. Also for fixing up the MPR 121 documentation, there were changes made to the code, and the documentation needed to be updated, and Carter took care of that, so thank you very much. Thanks to Sedacious for the ADXL34X driver pull request. Where I'm really excited to see that. It's being reviewed right now. To Summersoft for the Adabot CLI updates. It's going to make updating my library tracker much simpler. I don't have to go in and actually change the files anymore. I can just run the command. And thanks for adding examples to the lib bundles and fixing it so it's 3x and 4x now. And also thank you ahead of time for updating the libraries page in the Welcome to CircuitPython guide to reflect the new lib bundle structure. Thanks to Brennan for continued support with the Raspberry Pi stuff. Thank you for always being there to wire up something ridiculous, which seemed like usually the case. Summersoft and Carter for work on Fram, and thanks to Sedacious and Summersoft for being a sounding board this weekend. I was working on a piece of code that I have been trying to figure out for days, and I figured it out after talking it out. So thank you very much for that.
Yay. Awesome hug report. All right, I'll read off. Clara.sh says, hug report again to Tan Newt for putting up with my increasingly in the weeds questions and bug reports. Also a shout out to Arturo182 for reviewing my PR1286, which is awesome. SDW is lurking. Sedacious or Summersoft is usually text, so go ahead and put it in there, and then I'll read off Sedacious's here. Sedacious says, hug report to Katney for proofreading a thing. Hug report to Deshipu for providing some code to kickstart the bitmap wrangling I'm doing. And lastly, shout out to K-Town for the pull request review. K-Town also goes by microbuilder in some circles. And then Summersoft says, Carter, Tanute, Katney for continued review and discussion on FRAM. Katney for catching a couple things I missed on Adabot changes and a group hug. Awesome. Great. Thank you, everybody. So that is hug reports. I don't think I missed anybody. Sometimes people come and go, but yeah, I think I got everybody. So now we'll move on to status updates. Status updates is a software. Hey, C47D just accepted collaborator. Oh, that's awesome. Sorry, I got distracted. Hug report or status updates is a very kind of software engineering thing where people who are kind of doing disparate work get together and just talk about what they're working on. So take a minute or two to talk about what you've done in the previous week up till now, and then what you plan on doing going forwards. It's really a nice way for people to hear about what you're doing and give you tips and tricks if they say like, oh, like look at this thing or look at that thing or make sure you don't do this, those sort of tips. So I'll start us off and then we'll do another round robin. So yeah, and I guess I forgot to say that, but Jerry did it, is that if you have topics for In the Weeds, please post those in the text chat and we'll collect those in the notes and then go back to those in the section after this one. Okay, so status updates for me. I added some debug info to the generated frozen mpy.c file for debugging like the file size and memory impact of the things that we have frozen in. I've been working primarily on the MIDI USB stuff. So we want to get MIDI over USB working, and I've started with just getting the descriptors generating using the descriptor library that we have, the USB descriptor library we have. My hope is that I can get that working by Wednesday. I have a demo I want to do on Show and Tell on Wednesday. So that should be exciting. Most of the structure is already there. Like, it's a lot of reading the USB specs and stuff, which is, you know, kind of overwhelming. It's interesting because it's like from the 90s, which is also interesting. And then once I get MIDI kind of like statically done, I think I'm going to switch back to the display IO stuff, because I removed frame buff in Alpha 2 and people have started to notice that. So I really want to finish display IO so we can move people over to that. So that will be my primary focus during the week this week. And then I have one other thing I need to do today, which I was working on the toaster oven reflow thing that I've been doing, and I added some stack overrun detection stuff. So I'll PR that, and what you'll see is that we changed the way the stack works a little bit in 4x, and so if the stack happens to start overriding the heap, it'll actually, like, you'll get a Python exception, which means it won't crash. It just means that your program will stop and let you know. And there's not a whole lot you can do about that yourself, but it's good for us to know that it happens. Okay, so let's loop-de-loop here and go back to the top of the list. Bravo Delta is lurking, so we'll go to Brennan.
So last week was just kind of miscellaneous testing and docs work for a few things. I just got an order from Adafruit with the remainder of the Pi Hat hardware that I didn't have, so I'm going to be focusing on guides for those, and I don't know if there will be library changes necessary, but there might be a few things with that.
Okay.
Then kind of whatever testing Kattni needs, there's still a set of breakout boards we need to test libraries on. Thinking, and as sort of a side project, I want some pedals for keyboard input because my text editor configuration really should get more complicated. So I'm going to be experimenting with using CircuitPython for that.
Nice. Yeah, Dan did something similar, so I think that's really where CircuitPython will shine. So I'm curious to see how that goes. And I know a lot of those foot pedal things are MIDI, so we don't have MIDI host yet, but somebody was saying like it would be really cool if you could do USB host and support MIDI, but that is not coming in 4X. I promise you that. Unless somebody else does it, it won't be me. But it'd be cool. Okay, Carter.
A couple of things that came about from other locations. I found a bug in the NPR 121 library helping out an Arduino issue in the forums, and it's in the CircuitPython one also. Basically, you have to turn it off to write to any registers, and that's being done in the constructor, but not after the fact. And it really wasn't a huge issue because the only thing that was trying to do that was setting thresholds at this point. So that really wasn't sticking. So I've PR'd something for CircuitPython, and we'll see how that goes. And then another one, I'm not sure if it's an issue, more of a discussion point. I did submit an issue to the Neopixel library. It looks like we're silently just letting tuples that don't match the RGB width. And it kind of creates unexpected behavior because it just will send out zeros. So it doesn't crash, but you're not going to really get the results you expect. So it's going to kind of create questionable, people are going to have questions on why it's doing what it's doing. So that's an issue that can be discussed. And I think that's all I got notes on. So that's it for me.
Okay. Thanks, Carter. All right, Charles.
Nothing this week.
Okay.
Didn't get much done.
No worries. Thanks for making it.
Yeah.
All right, Dan.
Okay, so I finished Pulse Out last week, and then made a 4.0 Alpha 2 release, which everybody knows about, which came out Tuesday night, I guess Wednesday morning maybe, or something like that. And then since then, I've been catching up on reviews and merges, and there's this ongoing issue about using a certain SPI peripheral on the NRF, which is really confusing and hard to figure out, and I have to interact with Nordic, the manufacturer, about that. So I had some queries into them, and they've come back, and I need to try to come up with a test case for them. So I have to figure out how to write a program that's not CircuitPython and compile it and build it and run it. So, which I haven't done at all, I think. And then there's some other random issues. The Stack Overflow stuff, which Scott is working on. Another person noticed that integer overflow errors don't have stack traces, at least some of them.
Right.
Turns out that's because constant folding is done in the parser. So I kicked that up to MicroPython, and they answered it. And now, as Carter mentioned, I did some Windows driver stuff, which isn't directly related to CircuitPython necessarily, but it helps it survive in the ecosystem. And we're looking at things having to do with the NRF, like maybe using a real-time operating system under the hood at some point. And so I spent some time just reading about that stuff in the past few days. So that's what's up for me. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. All right. Deshipu.
Okay, so it was quite a busy weekend. So first of all, there was today was the deadline for the Hackaday Prize finals. So I had to finish my prototype of the Harry class or Barrett with a CircuitPython Express on it. I posted a photo of it a while earlier. So that's finished, and that looks nice. I will continue working on it, of course. For now, I'm happy with it. And second thing, finally, the pew pew, the assembled pew pews arrived from China, so I have them in here, and I can start shipping them. So if anybody wants to have one like that, they are on Tindy.
Okay. Please drop a link. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Nice. All right. Thanks, Dishipu. I think that was it. All right, Drew.
Yeah, so I've been adding I2C support in Blinka for the Beaglebone. And for that, I've been using the BME 280. So do have that working right now, but there are some changes I had to make to other libraries to get that to work. Most notably, one of the issues is that the Adafruit CircuitPython bus device library, it does a zero length write to check to see if an address is there. And on the Beaglebone, that causes a write error when it tries to write to the I2C device. It gets a write error back. So it must be due to some difference in the driver for the I2C bus master between the Pi and the Beaglebone. So need to look at that more. So there's like preliminary support there, but it requires workarounds that are not like the final solution.
Awesome. Glad to hear you're making progress.
Thanks.
All right. F. Morton is lurking, so we'll go to Jeff Epler. J. Epler. I think you're text only. And nothing. All right, go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, let's see. Spent a bunch of time early in the week on the DHT. A couple of fixing a weird issue that came up last week with the first read after boot, and that was a good head scratcher. And then spent a bunch more time trying to merge in and fix up some changes that were made to work with the Raspberry Pi, and that all seems to be working now. So that PR is in, just waiting for review. And then he spent a bunch of time again getting refamiliarized with the bitmap fonts and graphics and stuff like that because of the disappearance of frame buff. So just trying to remember how to use that and play with it a little bit more. And there's this new graphics library that somebody posted to the forum that I've been playing with a bunch on the. It works pretty nicely.
Nice.
On the TFT, the ILI 9431, whatever it is, TFTs. I just tried it on the mini TFT, but there's some work to be done on that. It doesn't quite work right. And then spent the rest a lot more time on the LoRaWAN stuff and having a lot of fun. There's some new examples that Brent put out to use it with Arduino. And there's this thing called Tiny LoRaWAN, which is a really, really small, simple case. And so it's now working pretty well on the Arduino side of things, communicating to a Things Network gateway. And so I've been now working on trying to get ready to try and port that over to work under CircuitPython because it's maybe small enough to fit like on an M0.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I think
that's my real hope for this week is to see if we can get that working under CircuitPython.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much to the point where new stuff should go into the M4. Simply because we're running out of space, and like because of the Hallowing is an M0, I've got to fit more display stuff in there as well, which I'm a little worried about.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on anything being in the core for the LoRaWAN support.
Okay.
It was all Python.
Perfect.
Yeah, but we'll see. And then, but I think eventually it might make sense to try and put some of that into the core, especially the AES stuff.
Yeah.
The core for the M4. So
yeah,
but totally. I thought I'd just try and get it working under Python first as a simple case.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thanks for all the work that you do on testing all that stuff, Jerry, as always.
Oh, it's been great fun. This radio stuff's really cool.
Yeah, I'm personally excited to get into it, but I just I have other stuff to do first. But I'm glad you're working ahead of me, and I saw that display, the graphics library on the forums go by as well, and my hope is that we can port that to the new display stuff, because I think it's higher level than where the display IO or frame buff stuff is. So
yeah, I think so. That'll be fun to try and work on. He's done a lot of work on that.
Awesome.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's my hope, is that work won't go to waste for sure. All right, before we go to Josh, you can type in, but then I'm going to read off F. Morton as well. Who is lurking but had a status update. So I'll just take a time code. Says, I am lurking but want to let you know I submitted a PR to the Mu editor to add a run button and copy live files to CircuitPy if the files are not already stored on CircuitPy. Works great with source code management. We are actively using this with kids at our makerspace. The PR is github.com/mu editor/mu/pull485 if people want to take a look at that. I'll do Josh, read off Josh here. Josh says, this week I've been working on upgrading EduBlocks to use the new Scratch Blocks style, which is more optimized for touch. In parens, blocks are larger with a bigger touch point, which will hopefully help with when we get Bluetooth working. Includes nice fields like sliders and workspace comments like sticky notes, too, for a better experience. The public beta will be released this week. Awesome. And if you're not looking at the recording of the video, check it out. There's a slideshow, a screenshot of the new EduBlocks look. So check that out as well. Okay, Kattni.
Hey. So updated a couple guides. The MCP23XX is updated. There's an older guide that was deprecated. The Neopixel Uber guide has been updated. The updates to the NPR 121 documentation are completed. Carter took care of that for me. I added the newest libraries to PyPI. I think the only one that was recent was the MAX 31856.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's a permanently ongoing thing because every time we add libraries, we put on PyPI.
Mm-hmm.
Fixed a bunch of repo level issues identified by Adabot. You should notice that the issues list is a little shorter today than it was last week.
Yay.
Took care of a bunch of stuff with that. And I posted the CircuitPython library tracking issue in the notes. For this week, just added brand new fix a slideshow library bug. So I'll take a look at that as soon as we're done here. I need to update the Neopixel Raspberry Pi guide. It's a super popular guide that hasn't been updated in a very long time. And so where normally we've just been updating the sensor or hardware guides themselves with the Python and CircuitPython usage, because this is such a popular guide, we want to update it as well. So I'm going to work with Brennan to do that. I need to finish the MCP3XX guide, which I have started, but that needs to be finished. Next up is character LCD. Then after that, finish the matrix keypad guide that was started before I was gone for a month. And I need to update the CircuitPython library tracking issue today with the newest information so we can keep track of what's going on there.
Awesome. Thank you, Kattni. So next up we have Clar.sh, who already typed it in earlier, so I'll just read that out after I take a time code. They say, what's new? I finished a huge refactor of the KMK keyboard firmware project. I can now max out my personal typing speed around 100 words per minute rather than it getting tripped up at 50 words per minute or so, with a rolling eyes emoji. And added a bunch of neat, more advanced functionality to it. Found and reported a possible deadlock and sometimes soft brick in CircuitPython, which is issue 1283. I finished my pinout / port in quotes of CircuitPython to Maker Diaries NRF 52840 MDK board, submitted as PR 1286. This week going to finish PR 1274, which is the gzip zlib stuff. Hopefully really make a repro scenario for 1283, which I think is nested imports errors, and then even more, hopefully add zip module support once 1274 goes through. Perfect. Thank you for confirming that. All right, let's see. K-Town, do you have status updates and hug reports? I know you jumped in late.
Nothing specific to add. I can jump in to the conversation later on the maybe the BLE API.
Okay, yeah, totally. We'll do that as the first in the weeds thing, or maybe we'll do it later. There might be some short stuff. Before we get to Summersoft, I just wanted to, and I think Sedacious probably has notes as well. Go back and just look. Lady Ada did jump in a little bit earlier with a leak, which is also kind of her status update. So if you're not looking at the recording, you should take a look. There's a leak here. It's a new kind of gaming badge sort of thing that she prototyped over the weekend. It's kind of like a Halloween, but less skull shaped. But the contents of what's on the PCB is more like what you would see on the Halloween. So if you want to see a screenshot from Eagle of that, check that out. That's from Lady Ada. Okay, and then lastly, I have two more to read off. First, I have Sedacious. Again, take a time code. Who says, working some bitmap wrangling for the board I'm working on. I'll probably use a Sprite to whip up some simple animations and work on some code to drive them. Another board is at the fab that should make doing DIY CircuitPython boards even easier. Says, I haven't forgotten about my DIY CircuitPython board tutorial, but I'm pretty busy and my OS upgrade hit the notes file I was doing all my writing in as a SQLite file, so I'll have to write something to pull those out. Oops. Yeah, OS upgrades can screw you. I was surprised by the Windows one where it's like, it's deleting files. That's never good. Okay. 4213. Last but not least, we have Summersoft, who says, for the FPRAM library, I2C is almost done, I hope, with a winky emoji. Says, CircuitPython build tools, fix the README, placement in the zip file. Adabot, initial command line args for log output and error depth PR'd. Awaiting confirmation on disable prompt issue will work. This week, update welcome to CircuitPython Learn Guide with new library bundle info, including the new examples and the versions placement. Adabot / Travis cron research discussion, and time to refocus on frequency in. Awesome. Thank you, as always, Summersoft, for all of that. Okay, that is... Scott, did you have something? I think you just unmuted. Nope. Okay. That is status updates. Thank you, everybody. All right, Scott is... All right, Cascade joined too. I think this might be a record for number of people. It's awesome. Cascade, you'll have to go back and listen. You got a hug report earlier, I believe. Okay, and Scott just switched. Okay, let me take a time code and we'll go into the weeds. So the in the weeds section is a discussion section for wow, I was reading the things and lost my train of thought. It's a discussion section for any topics that came up earlier when we're trying to do the round robin. It's also in general just like what are things that we want to talk about. So we have a big agenda item right now, which is has to do with BLE, and that's K-Town has hopped in just to talk about that. I think that we will actually there's a couple others on here I want to knock out that I think will be quicker. So let's just cover those briefly. Jerry asked earlier, I know this was answered in text, but I just do want to cover it briefly. Jerry asked earlier about the difference between the 3X and the 4X bundles. I just wanted to mention it because I think my intention was always to have a major version match between the bundle and the CircuitPython release. We just didn't do that immediately with our Alpha 1. I know that we there was some discussion about like the actual internal version numbers of MPy, but we don't actually care to tell people that. It's just we should always have a bundle for the major release that we're doing, and then we will always increment the actual MPy versions with the bundles as well. So you should expect to see a new bundle for every major release that we do. So that's all I wanted to say on that. Does anybody have anything else on that? I don't think so. Nobody jumped in. Take another time code, and there's a note here for Raspberry Pi GPIO dependency. It says it's quick, so who wants to explain that?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
I've just noticed a handful, maybe more than a handful, of libraries where we don't have RPi GPIO listed in like requirements.txt, and I need to install it before things will work. I guess what I want to clarify is like just a Pi specific dependency, and now that we're also going to have stuff running on like the Beaglebone, are we going to need to do something different there, or is it just something where it should be in the dependencies and we've kind of been overlooking it?
I would imagine that it should be as a dependency on Blinka, and then anything that pulls Blinka in would use it. But I also feel like you and Drew would have a better idea than I would. I don't know how pip handles that.
So I should just check whether it is actually specific to Pi hardware, if it's a more general GPIO library. Drew, do you happen
for the GPIO? So for libgpiod, you mean? For using those bindings?
There's specifically a library called GPIO.
Like we're using the new character device for GPIO.
I don't think Raspberry Pi is using the new stuff.
using the new stuff.
Okay. What's the one what's the library that you're referring to?
I'm gonna go back and figure out which set of libraries, and I'll post an issue somewhere.
Okay. Well, because there's the newer semantics was in the GPIO 0 or something like that, right? Isn't that the one that has like the better, it's kind of more sensible semantics than like the legacy RPI.GPIO or the wiring Pi?
Could be. Maybe we just need to look at Blinka to use that.
So like I believe one of the people at the foundation ended up creating GPIO 0, which has much nicer semantics, I would say, than like the existing ones that were being used. But I mean, ultimately, all of these were under the scenes using sysfs, and then going forward, since that's deprecated, after it's going to be a few years, but we need to move away from it. So there's, for the system level, there's libgpiod, which does not have Python bindings. And that the change there is that GPIO is exposed through a character device. So it's a matter of opening up the character device for the GPIO chip and then doing IO control calls on it. So there are Python bindings for that. So like my idea for GPIO when it comes to Linux boards in Python is to use the new Python bindings for libgpiod. So I think ultimately like Blinka should be using the Python libraries for libgpiod.
Yeah, I think that's true. What I would suggest is putting an issue on the Blinka repo.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's good.
All right, let's move on. Drew, you have a wicked echo. It
makes it hard.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, follow up on the issue, and we can sort it out there. Okay, and then I think Carter has 3, but I think they'll all be quick, so let's just do those as well. 49, 43. Go ahead,
Are
Carter.
you sure? Like I said, I'm fine with you punting and going to the BLE stuff, which I think is definitely way more important.
Well, your stuff is usually quick, so let's just run through them.
Okay. So the first one, library file folder layouts. So, we've got sensors that can be I2C or SPI.
Mm-hmm.
We've got several of these, and we've written drivers for them. And then the basic idea is you create like a base class, and then you create an I2C and a SPI versions that derive from it.
Right.
So what's good ways of having all those files laid out or folders laid out for those scenarios? Because we've been doing, I think, various things.
I think if there's a lot of code in the subclasses, they should be split into different files. Otherwise, you're importing the other one that you don't need. But I would have them all at the same level. Yeah, so I would say the first option if there's not a lot of code in the I2C and the SPI stuff, but then the second option if there is a lot of code that people won't want to include.
Okay, so it depends on code size. So
yeah, I would say that.
And I kind of agree with that because option 1 is much easier to use.
Right.
And then option 2 requires a little bit more syntax in the import food. And I guess you can always refactor the first one into the second one, which is kind of what I've done with some things.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the libraries ever grow.
Yeah. Which you would imagine they should grow in the sensor pie instead of the other stuff, but you never know.
Right. Okay, then the second one, class
Yep.
versus instant level buffers. Okay, so this is another thing where we've done several things or a couple of things.
Right.
And it has to do with this little buffer we create that's like 2 or 6 long byte array buffer for using for back and forth communications and stuff.
Right.
So let's see.
I would do instance level, even though I know there's some class stuff. And the reason is that if it's class related, like any sort of multi-threading stuff will cause an issue potentially. So I would probably just move it over to instance level and do it in the constructor, or just do it once.
Okay, so the answer is don't worry about trying to save, a couple of copies of a 6-byte array. Just make it be in the instance.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a bit of an over optimization with the risk, running the risk of having the multi-threading stuff cause issues.
Right. Okay, cool. I agree with that. And then the last one, hopefully real quick, someone's got this. This comes up when we're trying to get these repos set up, and someone will create the blank repo, someone will pull requests to the repo.
Yep.
And all of a sudden we realize, we haven't turned on Travis.
Right.
So you go turn it on, but how can you say, all right, you're on now, actually run Travis without having to just do a silly commit to kick it?
I at least have permissions. I can tell it to do a manual build. If you don't have those permissions, let me know. We can get you those.
I think I do, and I think I've tried that. And are you doing this on Travis or on GitHub?
Travis.
So you go on Travis and you can do a manual build, and it will go.
Yes, that's been my experience.
All right, I'll try that again because I think I've tried it a couple of times, and for some reason it said, I'm not sure what it said, but it really just didn't roll until you actually did another commit.
I'm pretty sure it said that there's no travis.yaml file because it's trying to run on master, not on the pull request.
Right.
So you'd have to figure out how to refer to the pull request instead when you trigger the manual build.
And is there a way to do that?
I assume so, but I don't know what it is.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the trick. Somewhere on Travis say
it's probably similar to, remember last week we were talking about, and Jerry had this of how to easily pull down a PR. There's a ref there that he talked about. I bet you can give that ref to Travis and it will do it. Because it's doing something similar under the hood.
Okay, we'll try that. And I think we got a current repo we can play with that on.
There might be a test button on the GitHub side too.
So yeah, that's what I'm wondering, Dan, is if there was
my problem is we're using a deprecated way of making Travis happen, and eventually we're going to switch over to services or actions or something, but we're not.
Yep.
Okay, I'll play around with it a little more.
Cool.
I guess that's all I've got.
Awesome. Thank you, Carter. And
no problem.
I knew we would be quick. Okay, so we kind of wanted to take the tail end of this meeting in our in the weeds section to talk more about BLE. For those of you who don't know, K-Town joined. K-Town has been with Adafruit a while, like 5 years, and literally has written a book on BLE. So wanted to get him into this discussion. Arturo was great and has been working on BLE and pushed a PR. So we can take a look at that PR. Anybody have the number of that? But I think we were going to start with discussion of the pull request review for the BLE IO PR that Arturo did. So Dan, have you taken a look at that? What were your thoughts on it?
Hold on, let me just paste a link into that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't look at we were talking earlier about the making it more Pythonic.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I saw, I asked Arturo what the difference might be between this and uBlue Py.
Right.
And mostly what I see is that the classes for central and peripheral are no longer there, and now there's just a device.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if that's peripheral or what. So the example that he has in pull request has a comment that device says peripheral. So I need to just look at this in more detail. But there aren't separate central and peripherals. Maybe he didn't do central yet, or maybe it's part of device. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, I feel like
I was just looking at the classes. I was just looking at the class names first.
Yeah, I glanced through the docs, and I think it is like a keyword arg to device to tell it.
Okay.
Like which role to take.
So,
go ahead.
other than that, I mean, I think whatever we do, there'll be a lower level library, and then I think that there'll be a wrapper library on top of this. We could decide whether that is or isn't a good idea, but for maximum flexibility, it's probably okay, since this is implemented in C anyway. So,
right.
But no, I haven't had time to go through it in detail and understand it.
Okay.
That's why I was hoping Arturo could be at this meeting, but he's not. So.
Yeah, I pinged him, but he's not around.
Yeah.
K-Town, have you looked at it at all?
I'm in the same boat. I just looked quickly through. I just saw it this morning, so I looked through the example, and yeah, it seems that the distinction between central and peripheral is based on the constructor of the, or yeah, it's not obvious to me that there's a clear distinction between central.
Right.
And I mean, there is some overlap between the two. So I don't know if it's the right call or not, just to have device, or whether there should be maybe a clear distinction between the two roles.
Mm-hmm.
I have an opinion. But yeah, I haven't looked through all the file changes. I see 79 file changes on the API.
Yeah.
So I can't really give you feedback on that now. Maybe next Monday I can give, or in the pull request itself, I can give some more feedback on that. It does look like he did some central work though, because there's something going on with the scanner, so he can successfully scan for devices.
Right.
That's actually the easiest part of central mode anyway, is just scanning. Once you actually connect and maintaining multiple connections, maybe, because if you have 4 or 5 devices that connect to central, it gets complicated quickly. So I'm not sure where he is on the central side yet.
So I did take a look at the API last night and talk a little bit about what I was. So I brainstormed the BLE API before, and I think my issue with the API is it feels very C-like, because it's constructing an object and call a function to add it to another object, whereas Python has this really cool ability of just declaring the structure of something, and the benefit of that is that you can give names to things. So instead of just saying like I'm adding a service to a device, you can actually say like I'm adding a service with this name to a device. And the way that like Python does that is that it's through like the device is represented by a class, and then that class has members to it. So I really do like that way of doing it. I like it being declarative. And then when you're interacting with it, instead of having all these different objects kind of in your local variable space, where like in the way it's written now, like you have to say like battery equals service in the constructor, and then you have all of these things kind of separately floating around, where you have like you have a device variable, and you have a battery variable, and you have like a variable for the characteristic. I think that will get confusing really quickly, and I like the idea of using Python's more declarative, and maybe there's a middle ground here, but like if you can say a class and the class has a battery service, then all you need to do is keep track of your device object, and then you can do device.battery.level, for example, and then you can read and write that value directly, instead of having this more C-like way where like, yeah, under the hood everything knows how it's hooked up, but in reality like you haven't really hooked it up in Python land yet. You still have a bunch of variables that you have to use disjointedly.
If you have to keep track of a bunch of handles and things like that, it's not particularly user-friendly or Python-esque.
Yeah, that was my impression of it. And then the other... Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead. Well, I was just saying, and so the question is like, can we get away with creating an API that is like that, and not have a lower level API, or do we have a lower level API, which is the other thing is just implemented in terms of? So
right. It's not clear. It's not clear to me what else you would get from a lower level API.
I think that's a question for, like, if you have an unknown kind of device, do you need a lower level API to create a new, I don't have a byte computer service, but I want to create one. So do you need the lower level API in order to set that up? Or can you actually get away with just creating a class like that's byte computer, and it has a certain interface that you duck type to match whatever it needs or something like that. So like it has byte computer specific stuff, and it also has BLE generic stuff and say, I don't know. So I don't know the answer to that question. So, and that's really a question kind of for you, Kevin, about like, I mean, these are all described kind of in terms of the spec and the lower level stuff, and what are the abstractions what kind of user experience do we actually want to have for somebody, so that they don't necessarily have to understand all this stuff in order just to start to do a simple connect to some Bluetooth device and get or to send or receive data from it. So
really itself, I mean, it's a fairly simple standard, but it does still assume a lot of reading. I read all of the 4.1 spec. I don't know how big the 5.0 spec is, but it was like 2,500 pages. And when I was writing the book, I was just constantly flipping between like 3 or 4 completely different PDFs, because they'll give you one piece of information in the core spec, and then all of the key hexadecimal values are in some addendum somewhere, and it's a nightmare. It's not complicated when you sort of wrap your head around it, but people don't want to be dealing with that mess. So I think it does make sense as was proposed to have maybe some higher level classes like just battery service, or that people don't need to really start to like the CCCD, which is what will disable a bit inside that to get notifications when a new message comes. I don't think people need to necessarily know about those types of problems, because they just want to expose a battery level. So there will probably be 2 levels in a sense to the API classes that are based around the published GATT services and characteristics by some of the common services to implement. And then obviously you'll need some sort of lower level base class, which is just be an attribute. On top of that, you'll have services, characteristics, and descriptors. And then on top of that, you'll have your helper classes, which will be battery level service, or something like that.
Right.
How that gets exposed, I'm not sure, but I think this. There are two important discussions here, though, talking about the API. One is, I think we need to keep the high-level API as easy to use as possible. What's nice about Python is that you can do in 10 lines of code, something that would take 300 lines in C, having to track handles and global variables and everything. So having those high-level classes makes a lot of sense. But interesting discussion is BLE API depends directly today on the Nordic soft device. And when you were mentioning sort of two levels of APIs, Dan, that's maybe I didn't understand, but that's the thing I was thinking about is today we have a Python API that will call directly the soft device. Something we discussed a bit internally, but I think is worth continuing to discuss is, should we have those two layers as a sort of an abstraction layer? The way that if you look at the way Bluetooth Low Energy is handled on Linux, for example, everything works through something called the HCI, the Host Controller Interface, which is like, it's like basically a simple programming interface that usually works over UART or USB CDC. And it basically totally abstracts the hardware, the radio and the hardware interface from the code running on the computer, which actually sends the BLE commands. And it, in a sense, it makes the system completely hardware neutral. And it's a simple interface. And what I was thinking is, does it make sense sort of in CircuitPython to design our BLE API that sends and receives HCI commands, and then we can take those HCI commands and redirect them to the soft device. The advantage being that this BLE API and run it on a Raspberry Pi, because you have this HCI layer, you can talk directly to the BLE support on the Raspberry Pi. So you don't need a BLE dongle or anything, and you'll out of the box, it'll work right away with the Raspberry Pi for BLE. Or if you have a non-NRF52 device, you could use an external radio and just program an NRF, for example, with UART pins and HCI UART firmware, and then you could BLE enable any other, like one of the SAMD chips. You could easily enable BLE support by programming a radio with HCI firmware. It's totally different.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. So are you suggesting that the HCI interface is like akin to the SPI or I2C interface for sensors or something, whatever? And so we could write the HCI assembly and parsing, the stuff that takes the results. We could write all that in Python. You don't have to write it in C. And then we have some just really low level stuff, which just does whatever HCI primitives there are, which are probably like send and receive, or I don't know what there are, but it's even simpler. It's like sort of at the level of sending I2C messages or something like that. I mean, is that what you'd say, as opposed to implementing the HCI layer in C and then having an abstraction above that? So we'd have more Python on top and less underneath. And so what, for instance, Arturo did, we would take the code that he wrote, which is mostly in C, and have a level and have that rewrite that in Python and have it talk to the low-level HCI primitives that are available in the soft device. So,
and then you would need to, what we would have to do is change the sort of have also some C code that exposes the HCI interface, but that would actually be probably less code than we're doing today. And this Nordic soft device does have an HCI interface built into it. So does every Zephyr, Minute. They all expose HCI already. So it's actually probably less work in a sense to couple these. It's sorry, you were going to say something, Scott?
Well, I think
that's very intriguing, and I think if only we just have to make sure that we can get the performance we need out of the Python layer.
It's going to be a thin layer. It's just a UART sort of interface with about 30 commands. I don't know how many off the top of my head, but it's a limited number of commands and parameters. I don't think there's a lot of overhead, additional overhead moving through HCI compared to some of the benefits you might get.
Well, I think
it is an additional layer. So
the question to me is like, is it a C layer or is it a Python layer, right? Like, do we make this HCI layer something that is underneath whatever our Python exposes, or is that what we actually expose into Python?
So I think Kevin is saying expose HCI just like we have SPI and I2C exposed.
So it would be Python directly.
Yeah, so you'd say like, because this HCI, it's a buffer, it's a binary protocol. So it's like like a QSPI interface or something like that is a binary. So we could assemble those packets, the message packets, and assemble and parse the message packets in Python.
Yeah.
With pack and unpack or whatever.
The only question is, how do we expose the HCI interface on the soft device side in the case of the Nordic chips? Whether that has to be a library or something, I don't have the answer.
That would be a built-in module.
Right.
Some sort of C code that exposes that, and then but I think 90% of the code side, it's just a matter of taking the HCI examples that Nordic gives and figuring out how to get that to play well with the CircuitPython build system.
Right, kind of like the way HID is implemented now, where you just it's just a general report mechanism, send and receive report mechanism. In fact, right now we only have send, but
right.
And so all the decision about the kind of device is done. I think that's pretty intriguing. If we have the room and the performance for it, then it means, yes, we can just take, all we have to re-implement is this lowest level stuff, which is much less complicated, which is just the HCI protocol. And then the way you port it is just to re-implement that. And in fact, if you have multiple external devices, they all just work that have HCI, I guess, does the 51822 have HCI, for instance, or something like that? Like these like
the advantage is you can take the really cheap older BLE chips like the NRF51 devices that are under $2 now, and you can use one of those to enable BLE on anything. In this case, so the BLE API does become genuinely, and it's not just tied to the Nordic soft device and its limitations or not. Because everything you write will be decoupled from the pros and the cons of the soft device itself, which the soft device, the BLE implementation is very complete, but you're not tied to the design decisions of one manufacturer that way. And if you want to have an M4 plus BLE, you can just buy one of our cheap boards like the BLE sniffer maybe and reprogram that with HCI firmware. Or if you have a Raspberry Pi, then out of the box you'll have BLE support in CircuitPython, which is I think potentially a big plus. That makes a good for example, if you have a BLE mesh network, you can use a Raspberry Pi then as your gateway device with the outside world while staying fully inside CircuitPython.
Right, and the nice thing about BLE as well is that we're not focused on speed. Like it's
4K a second anyway, BLE 4.1. Maybe 6K a second is like the most you can get out of it usually.
Right. So that's beneficial because CircuitPython is not super fast either. But we can do things like I'm actually found there is a HCI-protocol pip package. So it's something that is in Python already.
There's a lot of implementations out there. It's less complicated to dig into HCI than it is to dig into the soft device, for sure.
We still have this, something like HCI doesn't exist for like these other non-BLE protocols, right? Like, what are the other ones? The 802.15.
The Gazelle and OpenThread stuff.
Yeah.
15.4, I'm not aware of an equivalent. I know 15.
Yeah, so, right.
So that and Thread are all based on.
On,
No, this is
API
Bluetooth
calls.
only.
Yeah.
Bluetooth
Okay.
only.
But that's okay. I think it still makes the layer thinner.
Right.
So the C layer thinner. And in the M4 or the NRF, we have the room. I mean, we wouldn't necessarily have the room to do this on an M0, but we wouldn't do it this way anyway, or something like that. So
right, like on an M0, we potentially are like piping, like we're putting an HCI interface over UART, right? Like,
that should be a couple kilobytes maximum, I would expect. In fact, you should, if you're using an external radio, the advantage of using HCI is that basically the classes on the Python side to wrap everything up conveniently with like battery level service or whatever. You should still be able to run that probably in a few kilobytes of code, I would expect.
That's optimistic, I think, but
yeah. Okay.
I mean, for something like battery level service, I think we're going to do that at the Python level regardless. Like the one thing that we do have going for us in Python is that we can load code dynamically as we need it. So we can do things like we have one file that we load that maps all the UUIDs to what we need to import if we see those, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. We can, if we chop it up into tiny enough little bits, then each bit will be small enough.
Right.
So,
I mean, that sounds great to me.
That would be my proposition, though, is to focus more on HCI. Seems to have a significant number of advantages to it compared to sort of just targeting directly the soft device. It does add a bit of extra work, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a safe option that gives you a high degree of abstraction away from a specific bit of hardware.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, we aren't really resource constrained on some of the newer NRF52 devices, but it is still nice to have the option to BLE enable non-NRF52 devices by going the HCI route.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the right layer to me, because it's a standard API across more than just the soft device. And like the nice thing about it is like we can always make C versions of Python stuff that we write if we do need more speed. Like,
yeah,
if we need, like, I'm looking at the HCI protocol pip package thing, and like they have a HCI packet.parse, like that sort of stuff that we're doing it constantly. Like we can come up with ways of making that faster if we need to. So yeah,
all right, well, go ahead. Yeah,
I was gonna say, to wrap up, that means that we're not doing the PR that Arturo did.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, Jerry, please.
And that I wonder if we want to open a new issue or something like that to sort of start tracking this development. I think this sounds great, and would love to try and help too. So, but certainly a lot of reading to do, a lot of learning, and there are probably a lot of links and a lot of places people have information.
Yep.
So I wonder if it'd be worth creating a new link, a new issue, or I don't know where you'd want to put it, but where this can evolve.
Yeah, I can do that, and I can create the skeleton of that or start it.
Yeah, I think it'd be really great. I really like this whole idea of this HCI interface. I think it'd be really a nice way to do things.
Yeah, I think we can still reuse a lot of the design work that Arturo did. It's just a matter of changing the bindings to at the lower level, but the higher level work.
Right.
There's still a lot that can be recycled there. Maybe making that he's done some work now that we might or might not use, but I guess that's.
I think like we never made any promises about it, so I think he'll be happy that it's just off his plate.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the HCI level is the right. Like if we do an HCI layer between C soft device on the Nordic on the NRF52 into Python, and then whatever abstractions we need on top of that to be able to do the BLE stuff we can add. And then that means that we can also implement other HCI transports like SPI or UART in Python purely, and then be able to place the Bluetooth stuff on top of it. And then sorry, go ahead.
No, so yeah, the benefit is it's transport agnostic in a sense, as long as it's binary.
Right.
So whatever you want.
Yep, totally. So we could have a Python layer that you for each transport that we want on top of that. And then for the non-BLE stuff that the Nordic chip supports, we can just always add that later as separate modules, which I think we would have done anyway. Those will be separate C to Python modules for that specific build.
You can still keep the soft device on there. It's just you'll have an additional layer that sits between the soft device. So you'll have the soft device and then an HCI module that sits on top of it, but you can continue to use the existing soft device for access to other peripherals.
Yeah. Right.
Just a matter of putting something sort of a layer between those two.
Yep. Yeah.
CircuitPython. Yeah.
Yeah. So shared bindings will be Python bindings into HCI with common HAL C functions behind it that match the HCI interface. And then those will be implemented by calling the soft device in the NRF port specifically. So the shared binding stuff will be HCI only. Which would be cool.
Thank you. There's a lot of advantages to be gained from going down that road, but yeah, there's obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with it. It's all. When I was at Google, it was emphasized to me that it's always good to reuse an existing API than making up your own. So,
and it's been around forever, so it's really well understood and well documented, and there's lots of it. So you're not just relying on one vendor's development team.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very. I mean, I wish we had stuff like that for TCP/IP or something. There's no ACI equivalent.
Yeah, this actually comes back to I guess a different discussion. I don't know if this is the right time or place, but we were talking about RTOS or not RTOS context of BLE, but I think there is an interesting discussion to be had if we looked at some of the RTOSs that are out there today. It's the two big ones for me in the open source space are Zephyr and Minute. The benefit of maybe considering if we want to use bare metal on some of these complex sort of network heavy devices is there are already open source implementations, not just of BLE, but of IP6, of OpenThread, of 15.4, of a lot of other complex protocols that are already implemented on some of these.
Right.
So if we're going to invest time into BLE, for me, it's a valid question to consider: is the soft device approach, or is it worth considering migrating away from the Nordic soft device and looking at an alternative like Zephyr or Minute or something else source, and then running CircuitPython as like a thread there, where you'll also get multi-threading support.
Right.
That's I don't think that's something for the upcoming release, obviously.
Yeah.
But maybe just a discussion to have in the back of your mind.
Right. I think that's that's exactly what I would say is like, I think the HCI level, doing that now means that we're not cornering ourselves into the soft device with the work that we want to do imminently. But I think that for switching to the actual RTOS, I think there's work around bootloader and general like higher level stuff, like how does it run and all of that would need to be worked on that we just don't want to do for 4X. So I think the HCI stuff is the perfect level of like, we're not cornering ourselves, but we're not going to do it immediately. But when we do want to do it, we'll be able to switch over pretty easily.
Is HCI actually used in Zephyr and Minute to talk to the potentially?
Right. They talk directly to the radio. They both implement totally a full direct Bluetooth low energy stack that talks to the PHY, but they both have full HCI and examples that you can easily compile. and expose it over UART or USB CDC or whatever. So they both have HCI built in out of the box. To talk to the radio though, because they've implemented their own radio drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the only downside of HCI is that even though we're all kind of in the same CLAN, we end up having to do packing and unpacking across that boundary, right?
Yeah, but the overhead will be minimal. It's just there is a small bottleneck there,
right?
But honestly, there's also a bottleneck talking to the soft device, and there's trade-offs in that architecture,
right? Where
you lose control of your interrupt handling, and you can't do anything real time anymore,
right?
So there's trade-offs in either case. But the HCI, the bottleneck should be fairly limited.
Right. Yeah, I guess I forget I'm in C-land where you can just like offset into your structures just fine.
So on something like the NRF 5240 or the M4 chips, I can't imagine this. You'll see much of a performance hit. Packing and unpacking bytes relative to the throughput you're going to get with BLE anyway. It's not like you're sending PDFs back and forth or something.
Right.
Yeah, you're moving that stuff onto the stack or something anyway, so it gets moved one way or the other, I guess.
How does the doing it at the HCI level impact our ability to share the BLE stuff with user code? So like one thing I want to do is to be able to like will show up by default as a device that has a particular service that allows you to like update like a file or something, right? If you're editing from a phone. So
I'm not sure I follow what you're...
Suppose we want to be a peripheral. CircuitPython also wants to be a peripheral that looks like a file system or something like that.
Right.
So that people can have an app on a phone that lets them edit their Python code.
Right. But we can manage locking and stuff in coordination with the user HCI stuff. So basically, like there's going to be two sources for HCI commands. There's going to be the internal C CircuitPython code, and then there's also going to be like whatever the user's USB code or user's user code is doing, the user's Python code is doing.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I guess I follow. So yeah, I mean that becomes just a programming issue. How do you merge the underneath the surface? Everything with BLE is based on just an attribute table. So it's just records in the table. Mm-hmm. So what you will probably have to do is, if you want to add something, you'll need to say stop advertising, mm-hmm. update the attribute table with the new records, and then start advertising again.
Yeah.
You can't do that to merge. So it just means you'll have to have internally some sort of attribute list that can be, but that's just a programming problem. There's no reason you can't do that.
Right.
To update things on the fly, where you have like a base basically a base subset of services. Mm-hmm. Maybe you want to expose some DFU service and maybe BLE UART.
Right.
You can add something on top of that, but there's this sort of minimum contract of it's always there. So there's no reason you can't do that with HCI. No.
Cool. Yeah, we'll just have to have mechanics around it to make sure that we don't clobber and stuff.
It's just a resource management issue, really.
Right. Yeah, and it's a similar one to what we have with USB.
It's a similar problem. The organization of BLE is actually quite similar to USB beneath the surface.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Not at all. I've been doing MIDI stuff, and I looked at the BLE MIDI stuff, and it's just like, oh, just a matter of how you get the packets across.
Yeah, I did notice the resemblances to USB when I was reading through the spec. Yeah,
totally. All right. Well, I think, is there anything else we want to talk about for BLE, or I think we've got a plan?
I've got nothing else to throw in. It's a shame Arturo couldn't give his 2 cents worth.
Yeah. Well, I will, because this is recorded, I'll link Arturo to it, and we can follow up on the issue that Dan makes. Okay. Well, I'm going to wrap us up because we are an hour and a half in. Thank you, everybody who made it to this meeting, and for all of those of you who stuck around to hear about BLE. And K-Town, thank you specifically for you as well, jumping in and joining us here. This meeting happens every week at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, here on our Discord. Our Discord, if you want to join, we're around all week, but we're only usually in the voice channel on Mondays for the meeting. You can go to the URL adafru.it/discord to join. Everybody is welcome both to join the Discord and to join the voice meeting that we have on Mondays. The meeting is recorded. The notes have time codes in it, so you can skip around to the things you want to listen to. If you want to see those recordings, you can go to the Adafruit YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Adafruit. Or you can go to diode.zone. I'm putting them up there as Tan Newt. You can check them out there, TANNEWT. I'll post links to both of those in the CircuitPython text channel, so just start with the Discord. And we should be, I think, normal schedule next week, so we'll see everybody in the Discord until Monday when we have our next voice meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.